Oxford, England, is one of the most historic cities in the world, known for its prestigious university and rich past. Here's a brief history of the city. Early history, pre-11th century. Oxford's origins date back to the Saxon period, 8th century, where it was known as Oxenaford, a place where oxen could cross the River Thames. In the 10th century, it became an important military frontier town during conflicts between the Saxons and the Danes. Medieval period and the university, 11th to 15th century. The University of Oxford, the oldest university in the English-speaking world, was established in the 12th century. It grew rapidly, especially after a dispute in 1209 led to some scholars leaving to found Cambridge University. By the 14th century, Oxford was a thriving center of learning, producing scholars like Roger Bacon and John Wycliffe. Tudor and Stuart era, 16th to 17th century, Oxford played a key role in the English Reformation, witnessing the burning of Protestant martyrs in 1555 during Queen Mary's reign. During the English Civil War, 1642 to 1651, Oxford served as the royalist capital for King Charles I. 18th to 19th century. The city continued to develop, with the expansion of colleges and new scientific advancements. The Industrial Revolution brought significant changes, but Oxford retained much of its medieval character. The 20th century to the present, Oxford became a hub for literature and innovation, inspiring writers like J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. The Oxford motor industry, including Morris Motors, helped boost the city's economy in the 20th century. Today, Oxford is a global center for education, research, and technology, while still retaining its historic charm. The ghost of the Radcliffe Camera. The Radcliffe Camera, one of Oxford's most iconic buildings, is not just a stunning piece of architecture, it is also rumored to be haunted. By day, it stands as a symbol of academic excellence, a grand circular library at the heart of Oxford's historic Bodleian Library system. But by night, eerie whispers, ghostly footsteps, and an unsettling presence have been reported by those brave enough to linger after dark. The tragic tale behind the haunting. The origins of the haunting trace back to the late 19th century, when a brilliant but deeply troubled student named Edward Hargreaves was studying at Oxford. Edward was known for his obsession with perfection, particularly in his studies of classical literature. Desperate to achieve academic greatness, he spent countless sleepless nights in the Radcliffe Camera, poring over ancient texts by candlelight. As the story goes, Edward's relentless pursuit of knowledge took a heavy toll on his mental state. He grew increasingly paranoid and withdrawn, convinced that he was running out of time to make his mark on history. When his final examinations arrived, he suffered a devastating failure, whether from exhaustion, a mental breakdown, or sheer bad luck. No one knows for sure. Unable to cope with the shame of academic failure, Edward allegedly took his own life within the library. Some versions of the story claim he was found slumped over his desk, surrounded by books and papers, while others say he threw himself from one of the Radcliffe Camera's high windows. The details remain murky, but what is certain is that his spirit has never truly left. Strange occurrences and paranormal encounters. Since Edward's death, numerous students, librarians, and night watchmen have reported strange happenings within the Radcliffe Camera, particularly in the late hours. Some of the most chilling encounters include whispering voices. Visitors studying alone have reported hearing faint murmurs, as if someone were reading aloud in a hushed voice, yet no one is there. The sound of turning pages. Even when the library is empty, the soft rustling of pages being flipped has been heard, as though an unseen scholar is still poring over books. Cold spots and unseen presence. Many have described sudden, intense chills, even on warm summer nights. Some say they feel watched, as if an unseen figure is standing just behind them. The flickering light phenomenon. Candlelight or old-fashioned lanterns have been spotted in the windows at night, even though the building is locked and uses modern lighting. One of the most terrifying encounters happened to a security guard in the 1990s. While making his rounds, he heard footsteps echoing through the empty chamber. As he turned a corner, he glimpsed a shadowy figure, a young man in old-fashioned academic robes, his face pale and sorrowful. The figure vanished before his eyes, leaving the guard shaken and unwilling to ever enter the Radcliffe Camera alone again. A never-ending quest for knowledge. Some believe Edward's ghost lingers because he never truly accepted his failure. Perhaps he is still studying in the afterlife, trapped between worlds, unable to move on. Others say he seeks revenge on the institution that broke him, a restless spirit doomed to wander the library halls forever. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the Radcliffe Camera holds an undeniable air of mystery. Those who dare to stay late might just feel the brush of an unseen presence or hear the faint rustling of pages, a lingering scholar forever searching for the knowledge he was denied in life. The Black Monk of Brasenose College. Brasenose College, one of Oxford's oldest and most prestigious institutions, is home to one of the city's most terrifying hauntings, the spirit of the Black Monk, a faceless hooded figure that has been spotted gliding through the college's ancient halls. Those who have encountered him describe an overwhelming sense of dread, a suffocating darkness that lingers long after the apparition has vanished. The legend behind the haunting. The origins of the Black Monk's ghost date back to the 14th century, when Brasenose College was built on the site of an even older religious institution. Historical records suggest that a small group of monks once lived there, practicing strict religious discipline. Among them was Brother Benedict, a man whose devotion to his vows was overshadowed by dark secrets. According to legend, Brother Benedict fell in love with a local woman, an unforgivable sin for a monk bound by celibacy. Overcome with guilt and fear of discovery, he attempted to sever ties with her, but she refused to let him go. When his superiors found out about the affair, they sentenced him to death for breaking his sacred vows. Rather than a quick execution, the punishment was far crueler. He was walled up alive in one of the college's underground passages, left to die in complete darkness. His anguished screams were said to have echoed through the stone walls for days before falling silent forever. Paranormal encounters. Since his gruesome demise, Brother Benedict's tormented spirit has never found rest. Over the centuries, students, professors, and visitors have reported eerie encounters with the Black Monk. Faceless apparition. Witnesses describe seeing a tall, hooded figure dressed in black robes gliding through the corridors of Brasenose College. Those who have looked closely claim his face is nothing but a dark void, cold touches and unseen hands. Students who have studied late at night in the library have felt sudden drops in temperature, as if an icy presence had entered the room. Some have even reported feeling an invisible hand brush against their shoulders. Disembodied whispers. In quiet corners of the college, faint, desperate whispers can sometimes be heard, though the words are indecipherable. The tone is unmistakably pleading. The sealed passage mystery. There is a long-standing rumor that somewhere beneath Brasenose College lies a sealed passageway, believed to be Brother Benedict's tomb. Some claim that strange noises, muffled cries, scratching sounds, and deep moans can still be heard from behind the ancient stone walls. The most chilling encounter. One of the most terrifying incidents occurred in the 1960s when a group of students decided to investigate the haunting. Late at night, they entered one of the oldest college buildings, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Black Monk. As they whispered among themselves, the candle they carried suddenly flickered violently and went out, plunging them into darkness. Then a deep, chilling breath was heard just behind them. One of the students turned and screamed. Standing in the doorway was a tall, hooded figure, his presence so cold it felt like ice was spreading through the air. In a blind panic, the group ran, only for one of them to trip and fall. When his friends turned to help him, the figure was looming over him, reaching out with a shadowy hand. The students fled, and when they returned the next morning, they found deep scratches on the wooden floor, as if something had been dragged across it in the night. The student who had fallen refused to speak of what he saw and left Oxford shortly after. A curse or a warning? Many believe the Black Monk's ghost remains as a warning, a restless soul tormented by his betrayal of his vows and the cruelty of his punishment. Others fear he harbors a dark grudge, angry at those who disturb his eternal suffering. Even today, those walking alone through Brasenose College at night report the unsettling feeling of being watched, and some claim to have caught glimpses of a shadowy figure standing just beyond the candlelight, waiting, watching, and never truly gone. The screaming spirit of the Turf Tavern. The Turf Tavern, one of Oxford's most famous and historic pubs, is known for its cozy, low-beamed ceilings, hidden alleyway entrance, and centuries of visitors, including famous figures like Bill Clinton, Richard Burton, and Stephen Hawking. But beyond its charming reputation, the pub hides a far more sinister legend. After dark, strange occurrences take place, and those who linger too long report a chilling, blood-curdling scream that echoes through the night. A scream believed to belong to a woman who met a horrific fate centuries ago. The accused witch of Oxford. The haunting dates back to the 17th century, a time when England was gripped by paranoia over witchcraft. Oxford, despite being an intellectual hub, was not immune to these fears. One of the last recorded witch executions in the city is believed to be connected to the Turf Tavern's restless spirit. The story centers around Elizabeth Croft, a local woman who was accused of witchcraft after several townspeople blamed her for a series of misfortunes: a failed harvest, a child's unexplained illness, and a local nobleman's sudden death. Though she denied the accusations, rumors quickly spread and she was arrested. The trial was swift and brutal. Elizabeth was subjected to the infamous swimming test in the nearby river, her hands and feet bound before she was thrown into the water. If she floated, she was guilty of witchcraft. If she sank, she was innocent, but often drowned in the process. Elizabeth floated, sealing her fate. On the night of her execution, she was dragged through the streets, past what is now the Turf Tavern, to a secluded area where she was hanged for witchcraft. Witnesses claimed she screamed in agony before the noose tightened, her cries echoing through the dark alleyways of Oxford. The haunting of the Turf Tavern. Since Elizabeth's tragic death, patrons and staff at the Turf Tavern have reported terrifying encounters with her lingering spirit. The Phantom Scream. The most infamous paranormal event occurs on quiet nights when the pub is nearly empty. A blood-curdling female scream suddenly pierces the air, stopping abruptly as if cut off mid-cry. Staff members have rushed outside thinking someone was in danger, only to find the alleyways empty. Cold spots and flickering lights. The back corner of the pub, near an old fireplace, is known for sudden icy cold spots. Some claim to have seen candles flicker violently, as if a gust of wind had passed through, despite there being no drafts. The Vanishing Woman. Several visitors have reported seeing a woman in 17th century clothing sitting in the shadows of the tavern, her face hidden under a hood. When approached, she simply vanishes into thin air, glass shattering on its own. On multiple occasions, glasses have been known to shatter inexplicably behind the bar, sometimes flying off the shelves as if thrown by unseen hands. A modern encounter. One of the most chilling recent encounters happened to a bartender in 2015. After closing up for the night, he was stacking chairs when he suddenly felt a cold hand on his shoulder. Thinking it was his manager, he turned around, only to find no one there. At that exact moment, the lights flickered and a piercing female scream rang out, making him drop the chair in shock. He refused to lock up alone ever again. A ghostly warning or an unfinished curse. Some believe Elizabeth's spirit remains in the area to warn others of injustice, a reminder of the cruelty she endured. Others claim her soul was so filled with pain and rage that it cannot rest, forever bound to the place where she took her final steps. Even today, visitors to the Turf Tavern are warned. If you hear a scream in the night, do not go looking for the source. It may just be Elizabeth Croft, still crying out for justice, centuries after her untimely death. The cursed portrait of the Bodleian Library. The Bodleian Library, one of the most famous libraries in the world, is home to some of the rarest books and manuscripts in history. But hidden among its grand halls and ancient texts is a secret that few dare to speak of. A cursed portrait that is said to bring misfortune, madness, and even death to those who stare at it for too long. The origins of the curse. The legend dates back to the 17th century, during the height of Oxford's academic expansion. A mysterious benefactor, Sir Archibald Ravenscroft, was known for his vast wealth and influence. A former scholar himself, he was obsessed with the idea of gaining forbidden knowledge, and some whispered that he dabbled in dark arts to extend his life and intellect. Sir Archibald spent his final years funding an expansion of the Bodleian Library, but shortly before the work was completed, he died under mysterious circumstances. Some say he simply passed in his sleep, while others insist his body was found twisted in agony, his face frozen in terror. To honor his contributions, a grand portrait of Sir Archibald was commissioned and placed in one of the library's halls. But almost immediately after its unveiling, strange occurrences began. A portrait with a dark presence. The portrait itself was unnerving. Sir Archibald was depicted with piercing, intelligent eyes, almost as if he were still watching those who walked past. Within weeks of its placement, library staff reported feeling uneasy in its presence, as though the painted eyes followed them wherever they went. Then, the deaths began. The first victim, 1654. The artist who painted the portrait, a young man named Thomas Lyle, was found dead in his home mere days after completing his work. His diary contained a final chilling entry. "I have made a terrible mistake. The eyes. I should not have painted the eyes." The Vanishing Scholar, 1712. A promising student, Edmund Price, reportedly became obsessed with the painting, spending hours staring at it. One night he was seen whispering to it. The next morning, he had vanished without a trace. His books were left open at his desk, his chair pulled out, as if he had just stepped away for a moment. He was never seen again. The Librarian's Madness, 1899. A head librarian, Arthur Gibbons, grew increasingly disturbed while working near the painting. He told colleagues that he heard Sir Archibald's voice calling his name. One evening, he was found in a catatonic state, muttering, "The knowledge is too much, too much." He was later committed to an asylum where he died whispering about eyes in the dark. Attempts to remove the painting. Over the years, the university attempted to remove or hide the portrait, but each time something strange would happen. The first time they tried to take it down in 1842, the wooden scaffolding collapsed, killing a worker instantly. In 1921, after another failed removal attempt, a library assistant suffered a stroke and claimed he saw a shadow stepping out of the canvas just before it happened. The final attempt in 1956 resulted in the painting being locked away in a hidden archive where it remains to this day. A dormant evil. Though the painting is no longer on display, some believe its curse is still active. On rare occasions, library visitors report feeling watched in the rooms where it once hung. Some even claim to have seen a shadowy figure moving through the halls at night, its eyes glinting in the dim light. To this day, few dare to ask about the hidden portrait of Sir Archibald Ravenscroft. Some say his thirst for knowledge was so great that he bound his soul to the painting, forever lurking within the Bodleian Library, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to set him free. The Phantom Scholar of Merton College. Merton College, one of Oxford's oldest and most distinguished institutions, is known for its medieval architecture and rich academic history. But among its hallowed halls and dimly lit corridors lurks a terrifying presence, the Phantom Scholar, a spectral figure who appears to those who push themselves too hard in their studies. The legend of Robert Withers. The origins of the Phantom Scholar date back to the late 16th century, when a young man named Robert Withers was admitted to Merton College. Withers was an exceptionally bright student, but also deeply reclusive, obsessed with achieving intellectual greatness. He would lock himself away for days, surviving on little more than bread and water, poring over ancient texts and mathematical theories by candlelight. As his final exams approached, Withers grew increasingly unstable. Witnesses claimed they saw him muttering to himself, scrawling strange symbols in the margins of his notes. Some even whispered that he had stumbled upon forbidden knowledge, secrets that no human mind was meant to comprehend. Then, one fateful night, he simply disappeared. His door was locked from the inside, his books still open on his desk, but there was no trace of him. Some say he went mad and fled, while others believe he became trapped between worlds, his soul forever bound to the college. A haunting that never ends. Ever since Withers' disappearance, students and professors at Merton College have reported terrifying encounters. The vanishing figure. A tall, thin man in an old-fashioned scholar's gown is often seen walking the corridors late at night. Those who try to follow him find only empty air where he once stood. The scratching sounds. Some students, staying up late to study, have heard the frantic scratching of a quill on parchment. Yet when they search the room, no one is there. Books falling on their own. In the library, books have been known to fall from shelves without explanation, always landing open on pages filled with strange symbols, similar to those Withers was said to have scribbled in his final days. The Phantom Whisperer. Some unlucky students have reported a whispering voice in their ear as they study alone at night, urging them to study harder, push further, only to turn around and find no one there. The most terrifying encounter. One of the most chilling encounters occurred in 1973, when a student named Daniel Prothero stayed up all night preparing for his final exams. Exhausted but determined, he pushed through until he heard a soft knock at his dormitory door. When he opened it, he saw a gaunt, pale figure dressed in a tattered black robe. The man's sunken eyes bore into him, and in a hollow voice he said, "You must study until you understand, until it consumes you." The student screamed, and the figure vanished into thin air. Prothero was later found in a near catatonic state, repeating the words, "He was right. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready." He dropped out shortly after, never speaking of the incident again. A warning to overworked scholars. Some believe the Phantom Scholar is a warning, appearing to those who push themselves too hard, perhaps trying to save them from his own fate. Others claim he is a jealous spirit, seeking to lure students into the same madness that consumed him. To this day, students at Merton College say that if you study too late, alone in the library, you might just hear soft footsteps approaching and feel a cold breath on your neck as a ghostly whisper urges you to keep reading. The specter of St. John's College. St. John's College, one of Oxford's grandest and oldest colleges, is home to a ghostly figure known only as the Spectre of St. John's. The apparition is said to haunt the college's chapel tower, where it has been seen by many over the years, each encounter leaving behind an overwhelming sense of dread, sorrow, and mystery. The tragic story of Lady Eleanor. The haunting at St. John's dates back to the early 1500s, when the college was still a relatively young institution. The tale begins with Lady Eleanor Howard, a beautiful and intelligent noblewoman who was married to a wealthy but cruel lord. Eleanor was not only a woman of high birth, but also deeply passionate about philosophy and theology, often spending long hours in quiet contemplation. She was known to frequent the St. John's Chapel, where she would meditate in peace. However, her marriage to Lord Thomas Howard was far from peaceful. He was a man of great ambition and cruel temper, driven by greed and power. Eleanor's intellectual pursuits were seen as a threat to his authority, and he attempted to suppress her love for learning, locking her away in their home for long periods of time. The final straw came when Eleanor became involved in a controversial theological debate. She was accused of heresy, having openly disagreed with certain religious practices endorsed by the local clergy, and rumors spread that she was secretly sympathetic to more radical religious reformers. In a fit of rage, Lord Thomas betrayed her to the authorities, and she was arrested on charges of heresy and witchcraft. After a brief, unjust trial, Lady Eleanor was sentenced to death. She was taken to the local execution site, but on her way to her death, she passed the gates of St. John's College and famously swore that she would return to haunt the place of her greatest joy, the chapel tower. The haunting begins. After her execution, it wasn't long before strange occurrences began to happen at St. John's College. The first reports came from the chapel's caretakers, who described hearing soft footsteps echoing in the tower during the night, footsteps that didn't belong to any living person. Soon after, the college's students began to speak of a woman's soft sobbing, drifting through the halls in the dead of night. Some even claimed to hear her mournful wails echoing from the chapel tower, where she had once prayed for peace. Over the centuries, Lady Eleanor's spirit became known as the Spectre of St. John's. Her form has been described in different ways. Some say she appears as a pale figure in a long, flowing gown, others as a shadowy mist moving silently through the chapel's stone walls. One common theme is the profound sense of sadness and despair that follows her wherever she goes. The most chilling encounters. Several students, staff members, and visitors to St. John's College have had terrifying encounters with the specter of St. John's, the Midnight Reflection. In the chapel, some students report seeing a pale reflection of a woman in the tall, ornate windows, her face obscured by shadows, but her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. When they turn to look away, the reflection remains, staring back at them from the glass. The cold spot. Several witnesses have claimed to feel a sharp drop in temperature as they enter the chapel at night, often accompanied by the distinct scent of roses, which was Eleanor's favorite flower. The cold spot is said to linger by the tower, and it often feels as if an unseen force is standing close by. The whispering voice. A former college porter once claimed that while locking up the chapel at night, he heard a voice whispering his name, soft but distinct. When he turned around, no one was there. The lady in the tower. One of the most common sightings occurs in the tower itself, where Lady Eleanor's figure has been seen standing in the windows, gazing out toward the college grounds. When passers-by look up, they describe her as a shadowy figure that quickly vanishes when they focus on her. A final plea for peace? To this day, some believe that the specter of St. John's College is not just the restless spirit of a woman betrayed and executed, but that she is still searching for justice, or at least peace. Her tragic end, as well as the injustice she suffered at the hands of her husband and society, left her soul tethered to the college. Some students report that if you are quiet and respectful when passing the chapel tower at night, you might sense her presence watching over you, not malevolent, but filled with longing, as if she is hoping to be heard and finally understood. A warning for future generations. Others fear that the specter of St. John serves as a warning, a reminder of the dark and unjust past that can sometimes lurk beneath Oxford's beauty and prestige. No one is ever truly free of the past, and some believe Lady Eleanor's haunting continues because her voice and her story were never given the hearing she so desperately sought. If you ever find yourself wandering near the gates of St. John's College at night, don't be surprised if you hear the faint sound of crying or the soft rustle of robes in the air. It could very well be Lady Eleanor, still searching for the peace that was stolen from her all those centuries ago. If you like creepy stories like these, please subscribe to the channel.